Today's guest speaker is Scott Carpenter. Scott is the news anchor for weekend mornings at KCCI-TV in Des Moines, Iowa. Previous to that, Scott was the sports director at WLTZ, the NBC affiliate in Columbus, Georgia, of course, right there in the heart of SEC country. And so Scott did a really great job as a sports anchor, a sports reporter, and sports director, but then came to a turning point in his career and had the opportunity to do a lot of news and anchor news while he was at LTZ on an occasional basis, and then decided to go that route for a variety of reasons, which he'll share with you. But I think his path to make his way through university, to plan to target a career in sports, and to land that job and do very well in it, and then take a turn might be instructive for all of you who are considering careers in sports. Is that a fair way to start things?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So Scott, why don't you just, I gave sort of the cliff notes, but why don't you just offer up a minute or so of introduction and about yourself and where you are now?
Yeah, so like Gene said, I was down at WLTZ in Columbus, Georgia, and I guess Gene, Phil and I have something in common. We were sports director at that station at one time, then transferred over to news. And then I just, when the coronavirus hit, I made a decision as sports director that we had enough people and we didn't have enough people in news, and we had enough people to cover sports by just keeping one person in sports. So we began to help out with the news department. And by doing that, I started to be like, oh my gosh, I really like this news side of things. And I anchored on occasion to control our traffic that was coming in and out of the building. So I just really ended up enjoying the news side of things and decided to open myself up to that. And that's how, in the short term, I landed in Des Moines, Iowa. And Gene, if you let me indulge, I shared this to my page the other day, but it's very unique how I ended up at KCCI. I originally interviewed about a year ago, almost exactly, for a sports position at KCCI in Des Moines, CBS affiliate. Then I went home after the interview. The interview was great. Really liked the news director, the management team, everybody there, and was very heavily considering that position. And I went back to Georgia, packed up a bag, went to go cover the SEC tournament. And then the whole world shut down. Sporting events got shut down. Everything changed. And that's what started my shift over to news and working on news stories. And then I remember just saying, you know what? I'm going to shift my career path. I want to go morning news. I'm being a morning anchor, and then also be a news reporter. And just so happens my current boss at KCCI, as like a week after I made that decision and put tape together, called me and said, how are you doing? And I told her that, and they had a weekend morning anchor position and reporter position open. So from there, it was a no-brainer, and that's how I ended up at KCCI 1 year later.
That's amazing. That's a great testament to resiliency and rolling with what the world offers to you and making the most out of it. So if you don't mind, Scott, I'm going to hit the rewind button a little bit and take you back in time, because before you reported on sports, you were an athlete. I mean, you were on scholarship at university as a golfer. So take me a little bit back into your family and how your family got into sports, and your family has a rich history in sports, and how you got into it to spark your interest as a participant originally.
Yeah, I grew up the son of two coaches. So sports revolved around everything that we did. I was in baseball, golf, basketball, and you name it, I was in it when I was a kid. And if I wasn't in an organized sport playing, I was in the neighborhood playing with kids and, flag football, whatever the case. So growing up, my mother is an elite level gymnastics coach. Her name is Kitty Carpenter. She coached Gabby Douglas in the 2016 Olympics. I like to brag on her a little bit, but so that I've always been around the gymnastics world as well. My dad was a baseball coach for us growing up, and as well as the high school and off branch of Ohio State. He was a head coach there as well. So I always grew up around sports. So when I was like 7 years old, I would like grab a toy microphone and I would announce Reds games in my living room, and my parents just kind of tried to keep that going because they felt like there was a chance for it. And when I got married this past summer, my mom played some pretty embarrassing clips of me announcing those things. So they just always, I'm very thankful because they've just always encouraged me to go the sports route, because I make the joke a lot. When you get out of college, you say, I want to be a sports anchor. And they'll look at you and go, I want to be an astronaut. What do you really want to do? So, that's one of those things that I'm thankful I've had family around me that are very entwined with sports. And I think that helped me land a job and grow in the job, is that I had a deep understanding of sports because of my parents and the situation I grew up in. But very thankful they always encouraged me to keep going down that route, because I think it's very easy to get discouraged from pursuing that.
So you're in high school and you're an athlete and you're thinking about, well, where do I want to go to school? And so your golf skills enable you to get some scholarship money and go to Heidelberg University. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so interesting decision. My final two choices, I didn't want to go to Ohio State like everybody else, which is kind of ironic, growing up in Central Ohio. And then, because half our class went to Ohio State. So my two choices were, I was either going to go to Arizona State and play club golf, or at least try to, and go to the Cronkite School, or I had this offer from Heidelberg University, a small town in Tiffin, Ohio, and I got to meet the golf team, and they were awesome. And I was like, well, I can move across country and not know anybody, or I can go and walk in and have a golf team. And from the first day that I walked into Heidelberg, they had this facility for TV and radio there, which was connected to the actual radio station. And walking in there on one of my first days on campus was the best decision I made, because I met my lifelong mentor there, named Nathan Cudietta, who's done it all, produced for Fox Sports. He covered 9/11 when it happened. He covered the 2001 World Series that followed it. So he spent a lot of time in sports and news. Behind the scenes, he was a producer in Cleveland. And he kind of just took me under his wing. And then because that building was connected to the local radio station, I was anchoring newscasts and doing radio shows, which at Cronkite, in Arizona State doesn't happen your freshman year. So I was very blessed. And then then I got to the local radio station, connected with them, and started announcing high school and college football games in Tiffin. So Friday and Saturdays were pretty booked up during the fall that way. And it really just grew into a great final semester class I took with him, or we put together my demo reel, sent those applications out. One of those applications went to Gene Kirkconnell at WLTZ-TV. And I make the joke that I think he must have been drinking when he was looking through applications, because he chose me to come down for an interview. And then that's how I ended up at LTZ. But Heidelberg put me on a great path to make the most of what was in front of me, the opportunities I had.
I think that's an important point there, because you mentioned Arizona State, and we have a couple of students in this internship cohort from Syracuse, and there are a handful of schools that are sort of kind of like known as J schools around the country, Georgia, Missouri, things like that. But your path is instructive, and it should be instructive for all the interns on this call who are producing really solid work. You don't have to go to Harvard to make it. You can make your luck and make your career and level up on your skills no matter where you are. So Heidelberg, I didn't even really know Heidelberg existed till I met you, right? But
right.
So talk a little bit about meeting Nathan and blooming where you're planted.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think there's a lot of benefit for anybody that does go to those larger schools, and you just got to make the most of where you are. It's definitely a stop on the resume, right? They went to Missouri. Our newsroom in Des Moines is flooded with kids that went to Missouri, and they're all really strong producers and anchors and reporters, because they have a great program. They seem to teach kids very well. They come in with a huge basic knowledge of understanding. And where I was I had the opportunity to really grow at Heidelberg. We may not have had that extensive course or the funding that a Missouri, Syracuse, or notoriety that comes with those. But we had, in exchange of that, we had an ample amount of opportunity, because we saw newscasts to put on, not as many kids. And you just go in, and I could just go in and rep it out. And I think, Gene, as you alluded to, when I did an interview down there, you're very big on self-awareness. So one of the things I could always do with that is look at myself in a real on-air situation and evaluate, and then try to get better and better and better. And at Heidelberg, I had the opportunity to rep it out. So where I kind of understood the notoriety with the school, the funding might not be as big as a Missouri, Syracuse, or any of those. My opportunity was with getting a ton of reps. And so that's what I feel like I had to take advantage of. And then I had the class with Nathan, where he taught me all the nuts and bolts of of the job and had a better understanding when I went to apply from the spring to when I landed in Georgia in the summer, of what I was going to be doing when I got into the workforce.
That's great. So you're at Heidelberg, and there comes a point where you're starting to pick up steam with your career. You're finding that this is truly what you love and what you want to do. And you have to make a hard choice. You know, you're a golfer, and that takes a lot of time, and you want to be doing sports media, and you had to make a choice. So tell us a little bit about that choice and how that played out with you and your coach.
Oh, yeah. So basically, I came to Heidelberg very, very much wanting to golf my freshman and sophomore year. Partway through my sophomore year, I started doing sales and announcing for the local radio station there. Best call signs I'll ever work for, WTTF. So I was very involved with them and still involved with all the student programming. So I saw my golf game start to dwindle. My passion wasn't there, but on the other side of this was a growing passion for sports commentary side of things and broadcast media. And I just kind of had a moment where, and Gene, I know you're big on this as well. So the self-realization, being aware of yourself, self-awareness. And I was just like, I am not going to be a pro golfer, but I might be pro at this. So I just made that decision. I talked to my coach and I said, listen, I was like, I want to golf, all these kind of things. But with what I want to do and how my time is taken up in the falls, what they're offering me to do, and more of an expanded role, golf is getting in the way. This is a career path that I can follow. I would be done with golf in 3 or 4 years. There's no life for me for golf after college. So I just made that decision to clean break it and pursue every avenue possible for broadcast media, because going back to that, I knew I had to take advantage of my reps that I was getting.
How'd that conversation go?
So I was wondering if you wanted me to get into that. It's a great story. Me and my coach are still great friends now. We laugh about this moment, but he was very high on me coming in, and I was considering a couple D2 schools as well, and I went to Division III. So when I told my coach that, he just looked down and he went, "Well, that does it. You're the most disappointing recruit I've ever had." So that was how that conversation went.
But I think it's important, and I'm glad you shared that, because you said it, you're still friends with him, and he served as one of your references when you interviewed with me and gave you a stellar reference. So being authentic and being transparent and just being self-aware, and then making that hard decision and sharing it with those people you trust and you have as your advisors, it might be hard, but it's the right thing, and it usually plays out well in the long run.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the big word you just said there is authentic. In our business, you have to be authentic. You have to be who you are. And if you're not, people catch on to it really, really quick, and it doesn't come across the right way. So I think with everything you do, you have to be authenticity is key. And when you watch, like if there's a comedian or somebody that you really like just notice how, like, I always feel like that is who they are when they get off the stage. Or if there's an actor, that just seems so effortless for them to be themselves. And that's what comes across best on camera. And I think relationships in life too, if you're authentic, you'll come across the right people and be with the right people.
So you're on the verge of graduation, and you interview with us and you get the offer and decide to come down and be a sports anchor here in Columbus, Georgia in the SEC. Talk a little bit about the knowledge that you would be moving away from home, away from the Midwest. There were some pluses to that. I mean, you were coming to the SEC. We talked about it. That was the big time to cover college sports, and you had experience, and you were a fan of Ohio State. So you've seen what it's like when in those programs in high intensity, high competitive environments. So you had to bring your A game. You had to be on when you got here to be able to really be competitive and cover it down here. So talk a little bit about making that transition both professionally into the role, and also just some of the things you might have gone through as a person, figuring out how to run your life, get an apartment, get the electricity turned on, go into a different part of the country where you didn't know anybody and didn't know how people were down here.
Yeah, so I'll start with that end. So when we were driving back from the interview, I think my father and I had hit Kentucky. I got an email from Eugene that said, "Here's the official offer. We need you down here in 11 days." so it was like, all right, let's go home and start packing. Finish this road trip here and start packing. But it was one of the things that my mentor told me is if you want to really jumpstart your career, you have to. Now, the local radio station there would have offered me. I might have been able to walk in behind the scenes at one of the stations in Columbus or the surrounding areas in Ohio, but that wasn't going to advance my career the furthest. And so my mentor gave me a good heads up. It was like, you just have to open up the map, go wherever gives you the best offer. And so that's what I did. I opened up the map, went with whatever gave me the best offer, found an apartment very quickly. My now wife moved down with me and adapted to the Southern culture very quickly. I think, Gene, you'll remember this kind of a funny story when it was like 2 weeks after I started. I came home from anchoring on like a Wednesday night or something like that. It's midnight, and I went to the restroom, and I heard my wife get up, and she went to the guest restroom, and so I got out, and as I looked down the hall, the door flies open, and my wife screams, "Big bug! Big bug!" And I'm like, "Big bug? Okay, I'm gonna have to go smack like a spider or something like that." I walk in, it's the largest palmetto beetle, as they call them in the South, I have ever seen in my life. I slammed the door. I was like, "Big bug! Big bug!" And so I went in there with the Lysol and the shoe. I freaked out. We called the company. It was like, "You guys have got to come fumigate our place." We threw away all our food. And then I was told by just about everybody who's lived down there, you get some palmetto beetles from time to time. And I was like, okay, this is different than growing up in the Midwest. I certainly enjoyed the winters down there. The summers were extremely hot and humid, but my body adapted. And then there's the whole, you got to meet friends, right? So you leave everything. I didn't have any family in Georgia. I didn't know anybody in Georgia. And then when I left, so you come in and it can feel kind of lonely, but when I left Columbus, Georgia, it felt like home. I'm going back soon for a wedding of a friend that I met down there. So it really is as with everything, what you put into the community, and you get back out. And so it was very hard to leave Columbus in a personal sense, because now we're starting back over in Des Moines. So that's kind of the personal flow. But when we started back over in Des Moines, we kind of knew what was coming.
It's great. So you get down here, and if my memory serves me correctly, you're training, you're learning how to use a rundown system. You got your gear, you're practicing on that, and getting to know systems. And maybe the second or third day you were there, or maybe I'm collapsing the timeline, but certainly very near when you first started. One of the first, if not the first story you actually covered was not a sports story. It was severe weather coverage, right?
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah. No, that was maybe a couple weeks after I started. Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. And was that Hurricane Irma, Gene?
I think so. I think it was like a spin-up tornado because of the remnants of the hurricane, where you were chasing severe weather for us.
Yeah. So you talk about moving and all that kind of stuff. Maybe a week after we moved there, we decided to adopt a dog. His name is Blitz, and I'll preface this that Blitz is upstairs in the bedroom right now, but we had just got him, and our neighbors who we had been talking to on occasion had two dogs that were fairly friendly, and so they wanted to go to the dog park. When one of the dogs started playing rough, and it scared my dog, who I've only had for a day, and the other owner came in, opened the door. It wasn't a double gated dog park, and he got out. And the next day was Hurricane Irma. He was gone for a week, and then we had to go cover Hurricane Irma. And I knew my dog was out there. So, and the community responded really well. We pumped them all over Facebook, all that kind of stuff. And we got a lot of tips, Gene, through station viewers about where the dog was. And then we started seeing him every day around the complex. He was just too afraid to come home. But that was an interesting thing, because you talk about just moving. Well, now I've just got a dog. It was my wife's first dog, and this dog is now missing, and the remnants of a hurricane, and I've got to be out covering the hurricane. But specifically the hurricane coverage was something brand new, but you kind of like take what you see on TV and you roll with it. And I just remember when you would watch this kind of stuff, people would just be out in this pouring rain and all that. So that's what we did. We just fired up, went live or recorded whatever we did, that stood out in the rain. Important as a reporter too, never try to say what is coming or predictions, always just what you see in the moment. And that was one of the things that I had to learn as well. You just say what you see in the moment, and kind of what you see is what you report when it comes to weather.
Yeah, yeah. So then you're settling in, you're anchoring sports, you're reporting sports. What's one of your what might be a moment of challenge or trepidation that you might have said, oh, am I up to this in covering sports, in that first year or so there, where you said, did I make the right move, or can I do this? And maybe share a little bit about how you rose to that challenge.
Yeah, so I think sports is extremely busy. It's fun. There is a lot of perks to it, but it is extremely busy. You're filming everything. You're doing everything yourself. So, and a lot of positions are like this in our industry. But you're filming it, you're editing it, you're writing it, you're performing it, you're putting it to the website afterwards, which is great job security, because who are you going to cut out in that mix? I remember specifically a couple weeks into it, just when because the football season got going and I was still brand new, and it was go, go, go. You're turning multiple packages, multiple sportscasts, and then you're walking into a Friday sports show that you put together in an hour and it's 20 minutes long, so I was like, oh my gosh, that's when I really learned how fast paced the news industry is. And the sports industry in particular. And it is go, go, go. You got to be on it. You've got to be ready to roll when you walk in the door. Most days I came in knowing what was going to be in the sportscast, if not all days, because if I tried to figure out on the job, we're going to be pressed for time to come up at 6 with the stuff that we actually needed to cover. So, and then I kind of just made a decision, like, this is what I love to do. And I know that as I rep it out, just like I did at Heidelberg, I'll be more comfortable with these things. And then it starts to grow itself. You start to make connections in the community. People start to do you favors, tip you off on a story, tip you off on an interview that you might want to get, those kind of things. And it feels good to get those stories and that they see your work. And then it just kind of spirals up from there. And you start to get into the groove of it and it seems like a lot in a day. And in our industry, we constantly have deadlines, but you learn to adapt to it and grow with it. And then I think the fun part was, and Gene, I don't know if you agree or disagree with this, but I had very little experience with behind the camera coming into WLTZ. And it was fun to know that when I left, that was what grew the most. Was I feel like I became a pretty darn good photographer by the time that I left WLTZ.
Yeah, that's great. So what's one moment that stands out from that first couple of years there that was a really special thing you got to cover or do, or a really nice achievement or a great story? What do you remember from a moment in covering sports?
I remember a lot of the features, but I do remember the first Auburn game that I covered, and it was packed. I think it was a mid-afternoon kick, like 3:30 kick. Might have been the CBS game of the week. I'm not sure, but I just remember the crowd starting to roar, the eagle flying, and it was just like, this is why you do what you do, to be at these moments, these big games. And I had it again when Georgia played Notre Dame, and they had the most attended game ever at Sanford Stadium, and they debuted the flashing lights, and they played Bob O'Reilly, and everybody's rocking and singing that song. And you're on the field for it. You're right there, and you've got a front row to history. And I think that's kind of those stop you in your tracks, make you realize how lucky you are that you do what you do.
Let's talk a little bit about skill sets and specific. You're coming out of Heidelberg, and if you were to tell your younger self, you really should have learned this, so you need to bulk up on this, like when it comes to maybe writing or shooting or organizational. So like, what do you wish you would have known in that junior or senior year at Heidelberg that you could have gotten more bulked up on, so you could have been more comfortable when you transitioned in? Is there something you tell yourself, either professionally or personally, to advise yourself to be able, get ready for what's about to happen?
Brevity. Be extremely brief. It's so easy. Like so many of the stories that we do in a given day, if we had 4 minutes, we could do it. We could fill it as far as a report, and it would be easier. Honestly, it would be easier to just use 4 minutes. But our industry moves so fast, and we have so many reporters that our package times need to be about 1:15. And Gene, I think you did a good job of hammering that into all of us at WLTZ, especially us newcomers, is you'll do an interview. And the old phrase is, you cut the baby, and you'll love this soundbite so much, but it just won't make sense. And so what I would, in your story. So what I always think is, what is the biggest point you want to get from this story, and absolutely hammer it home with the viewer? Because it's so easy when we put together stories on deadline for the viewer to sit there and after it just go, I don't really get it, if you try to incorporate too much. And so in the 1:15, 1:30 that we get to tell a story as a reporter, what I wish I would have told myself, because I think I tried to complicate so many stories that could have been really good stories, is just take that biggest point, maybe two, and just hammer that home with the viewer, brief and concise as possible.
That's great. So you're moving along, and now of necessity, you're doing more news. And that's just what the job requires during that period of time, and you're beginning to use the storytelling skills you have in sports to do news. And what was a real epiphany you had that said, okay, I need to make this move from sports into news? Was it one thing or a combination of things, or?
It was a combo. One was I really liked the group of people I was talking to, the news stories, and I still love sports. I don't know if sports will be in my end goal. I mean, it might. And one thing is, it felt like it started to repeat. The stories, the seasons repeated. You got a lot of the same stories. Alabama is playing South Carolina. Here we go again. Alabama wins by 40. So, those things started to repeat. And when I met the new group of resources that I was talking to when I started to report on a daily side of things for WLTZ back in March, was I really like this. I really enjoy it. And I felt a great sense of team, working with a whole news team. And then as time went on, in sports, one thing, just to put it very bluntly, that you're going to have to get used to if you want to do it, is you're going to be working when the games are on and all those things, is you'll be out there working, and you'll have a long day. And you will have to work Friday nights, Saturday nights, Sunday nights. When the games are on, you're working. So it was part, and not that I don't still love it, but it was part, I needed a little bit of work-life balance. And I wouldn't have done it if I didn't enjoy news, but I was enjoying news so much. And I felt like, being married and, if kids are in the future, those kind of things, in a personal sense, just to be honest, I needed more work-life balance. And so now I'm dayside Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and weekend mornings. And I'm really, really enjoying it as well. And that's what all led to my decision to kind of take this little detour out of sports.
What's been the most surprising thing for you in that transition from sports to news?
How much I've enjoyed it. I think I had, when I moved, I was confident, but I had a little bit of concern that a few months down the road, I would start to wonder if I'm missing sports. And I don't. I mean, I'm going to, I'm off today, so I'm going to sit down and watch sports all day long because we're in the conference tournament. But what's cool about news is that, and this is the other thing, is I actually filled in while our one guy was out with a knee surgery. He couldn't stand up for a month. I actually filled in. They used the experience that I had to fill in at my current station. So I did that in sports. Yeah. For twice a week. So on Monday and Tuesday nights, I would fill in and do sports. And that gave me the opportunity to scratch the itch. But then news and sports stories coincide all the time. I mean, when we've had the state basketball tournaments at Wells Fargo Arena in Des Moines, hello, they can't have people in the building. They're down some funds, all those kind of things. That's a news story, a news sports story. If Steve Prohm from Iowa State gets let go today because they just went 2-21 on the season, didn't win a game in the Big 12, hello, that's a news story. A news reporter can turn that. So sports is news. It really is. And so it's beneficial to me because when it comes to those kind of things where those two intersect, my station goes, well, send the guy we got from Georgia that was a sports director. and so it gives me opportunities to still scratch that itch and see a different side of sports as well versus covering the nuts and bolts of the game. And and the features that go with it. And you get to meet, that's another new group. But we did it all the time. And Gina, if you recall at WLTZ, we did this all the time. But sports was like 8 minutes in the rundown yesterday because it was, then they did a whole special on the road to the Final Four. Sports is news. And if you're looking to pursue sports, I would just advise, make sure, and Gene, you did this, make sure you go somewhere where that is the feeling. Don't go somewhere where they feel like sports is a throwaway. And unfortunately, when I was doing some interviews, that's the way I felt. Don't go somewhere where they're just like, yeah, they take up 2 minutes at 6 and 10, and I don't know what they do after that. Go somewhere where they know the priorities of sports and how much it makes an impact in the community and when it needs to be elevated as sometimes even a lead story.
Yeah, great point. Great point. Well, we're halfway through, so I want to open it up to interns and let them ask you a question. Does anybody have a question? Just unmute and ask Scott. I don't see anybody. I'm scrolling through. Is anybody raising their hand? Okay, Rolanda, go ahead, please.
Okay. Hey, Scott. Thank you for coming today.
And introduce yourself too, if you don't mind, Rolanda.
Okay. Yes. My name is Rolanda Stitz. I go to Jacksonville State University, and I'm a senior. And I'm also pursuing a career in sports journalism, sports and entertainment broadcasting. And so I have actually 2 questions for you. So one, like, how do you? Because like I go to a school where it's not really known for like sports. It's basically hard-hitting news and photography and film. That's basically it. So my question is, how can you make those connections like through sports journalism when you're trying to put yourself out there? And like, and another question is like, how can you learn about sports journalism to get the knowledge to be successful in this field?
Well, I think one of the best things to do is to go through SIDs as well as just kind of get the information about the programs and pursue any opportunities. I think, Missouri is probably a lot the same way, but Heidelberg, reference them because they're big on news photography and news as well, and their sports aren't as up as a lot of programs in their conference. But I think like Heidelberg wasn't known for sports either, but there's always avenues for it. It was a small D3 school, and there's always opportunities to pursue there. But you're right, it kind of gets a little bit more narrowed, and if there's not priorities there, you kind of have to get creative. So I would reach out to whoever at the university has opportunities, and I got lucky where my mentor just happened to be really ingrained in sports and worked in sports behind the scenes. So if you can find somebody like that, cling to them and they'll point you in the right direction more times than not. And what was your second question?
The second question is like, how can you learn about like sports journalism to get the knowledge to be successful in this business? Because sports journalism is like a different language, I think, like, with in some aspects. So like, how can you I'm still trying to learn like the sports talk in a way. So like, you like as a journalist, how can you get that knowledge to be successful in this business?
Well, first thing is you don't have to overdo it. You want to be clear and concise for the viewers in a news level, because those are the people who may not be the most engaged with sports. They like to know what's going on. And if they catch it, they want to know what's going on, but you want to tell it in a way that a non-sports viewer would understand. And the lingo thing, honestly, what I would say is watching games, watching ESPN, watching SportsCenter, watching what works with them, their interactions. John Butchergross, I don't know if you know him at SportsCenter, but he went to Heidelberg University, class of, I think it was 1988 or 92, maybe. And one of the things he says at every start of SportsCenter is, "Thank you for joining us. We are men wearing makeup talking about sports." And those kind of things, you just kind of take what works and don't copy anybody. Don't try to be anybody else. Just take what works and then kind of develop it into your own thing, into your own catchphrases. And also don't force those. Just telling the story is plenty. I think a number one rule of journalism that kills me, I think some people have made it to network and they don't understand, is you're not the story, you're telling the story. So make sure you tell the story and don't, you want to bring the energy up here with sports, but you don't want to make it so much that it's just like, oh, okay, that was just, 17 run-on sports lingo things going together. So it is a balance, but I think just watching and repetition, and then just think on yourself. I still have a little note in my phone about sports catchphrases, and some I'm like, good Lord, that would never have worked. And some I've incorporated into my lingo.
All right, thank you so much. That helped out a lot. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. Grace, I think I saw you raising your hand if you want to unmute and ask a question. You unmute if you don't mind.
Sorry about that. I didn't notice that my microphone was on. So first of all, thank you so much for being here. Sports is really unique. I'm actually an athletic photographer at Jacksonville State University. So I think it's really cool to have another side of things come in. Love having athletics present here. So I think my biggest concern, or like my biggest question, is when pursuing, like, I don't know, you say you were good with photography. So that's kind of where my question came up. You ended up doing some photo for this. What is some advice on the side, how do you get in with these sports networks and getting your foot in and making that connection with what you have right now, I guess, as a student, or fresh out, and making those connections with these either universities or specifically sports networks within stations, to really get yourself out on the sidelines?
Yeah, so I would say, are you looking to be on air, Grace?
So I'm not exactly on so much on the anchor side. I'm more of the still and possibly motion type of video journalism with that.
Okay.
But whatever presents, I enjoy having a presence on camera from time to time. So it's something that I am interested in, but it's not my main focus. If the opportunity arose for me to grow in that, I would love to, but whatever you want to cover with this, I am down for, because
I just wanted to clarify, to kind of go from where to answer that. But yeah, I think credentials are always kind of a complicated thing, but get with somebody about credentials, about being on the sidelines for those games. And then you just have to really, I kind of sound like a broken record, but you just kind of have to rep it out from there, and your eye gets better at seeing things. And so where that starts is maybe not jumping right to a college game or anything like that, but literally my first time filming sports was intramural flag football. And and so one of the things I wish I did, this might go back to one of your questions, Gene, is I wish I would have day turned a lot more things in college. You have a week to do this. In the real world, you got an hour, so I wish I would have pushed myself a little bit more to day turn things, and maybe made some of our intramural sports a nightly highlight, those kind of things, which would also get people to watch if they were going to be on television and there's going to be somebody telling their story. But it starts small and then go from there. And one of the things I always say about sports photography, a challenge to be ready for, is I think sports guys are some of the best photographers, because if we go to a scene of a crime, those street signs are staying there. Those cops aren't leaving for hours. That caution tape is going to be up. Everything we need is there. I can miss one shot and get the same one again. When LSU's got a winning field goal kick against Auburn, I got one time. When Alabama hits the upright to lose to Auburn, I've got one time to get that ball hit in the upright. And so those kind of things, rep it out. And then when you get to those big moments, I promise you, your heart will be racing when you're filming them. But it's just a rep it out, and then your eye will know what to get. And then you'll be more experienced for those big moments.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. Anybody else? Okay, Jenna, go ahead.
Hi, Scott. I'm Jenna. I'm a senior at Syracuse. My question is, you talked a little bit about the work social life balance. What advice do you have for finding that balance and not getting burnt out in this industry?
That's a really good question, Jenna. I'm glad you have the foresight to ask that. So I was at a point where I felt like I was getting a little burnt out on the sports side of things. As Gene probably knows, Gene's got two really good sports guys at his station right now. One of them admitted that when I was there. But Gene's got two good sports guys at his station right now. And sports director is just go, go, go. Because not only are you doing everything like the filming and writing and anchoring, as we talked about, but you're also planning everything. And you're also valuing what stories can you get to a day, what can't you? And when tournaments come around, can we get an hour and a half down the road to get this important game? Or do we need to go 30 minutes east into Alabama and get this one because we'll get more games that way? There's a lot of decisions you have to make as a sports director, as well as doing all the work that goes into it. So I was a little fatigued by the time that I left, but that's what and when I was doing the news stories, I just found a little bit of work-life balance because sports departments are normally smaller. And I will say, if you're going to be a sports person, you kind of have to always be on. You have to, and the same thing with news. There's breaking news. We need to update our social medias, all those kind of things. But with sports, you kind of always have to be on because it can change in an instant. And I always tell people in our industry, if we've got a whole show ready to go, but Nick Saban gets fired on recruiting allegations, your whole show just went out the window, even if it's 30 minutes before showtime. And it's the same thing with news. It's a very quick and going industry. But when it comes to work-life balance, I think that's the decision for everybody. Our sports director here at KCCI in Des Moines, he works a lot of weekends and stuff like that. He's married with 2 kids and he balances it just fine. For me, I just felt like I needed to, and I think it might be different at different points in life, but for me, I just felt like I needed to make that switch to have more time, and also anticipation of if I have children in the future, those kind of things. But also, I'm not a night person as much as I am a morning person. So I've really got no problem waking up at 2 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday to go into work and get it over with. I don't like sitting around waiting till 2 p.m., 3 p.m. to go to work. That's what kind of killed me. But that is everybody's habits, and it's a kind of does the shoe fit for yourself kind of situation. So when you get in, you just kind of have to weigh what will work best for you in terms of work-life balance.
Great stuff. Anybody else? Looking around. Okay, no more questions right now, but let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind, Scott, about the role of new media and digital in what we do. And I think that when I talk to students, a lot of students tend to think, well, I'm going to be a digital writer, or I'm going to be a video shooter, or I'm going to be a sports anchor. And what they may not realize is in our industry, you have to do it all. So talk a little bit about, that aspect of repping and preparing your skill set for AP style text articles, for writing for script, and then all the technology requirements of shooting and editing and things like that. You do that now, and you're in your second job, and you're anchoring one of the main broadcasts, on the weekend mornings there with a lot of viewers. So, but you still have to do it all, right?
Well, luckily I have a photographer and an editor at this station. And that's good. And we're Market 68 here in Des Moines, but we work for a fantastic company, and we have I feel like I'm at one of the best TV stations in the country. It is just very well run. It's the machine that keeps on going. But here's the thing about, some people say that, well, if you're not editing and you're not filming, and then it kind of like, is it just so much easier now? No, your on-air requirements go up a lot more. So we're turning more sit-down features. We're shooting multiple stories in a day, airing one at 5, one at 6, and it just keeps the newscast fresh and provides more opportunities that way. And as to what you're saying, Gene, so one of the things I'm realizing is with a photographer and an editor, there's more sit-down interviews. I just did a sit-down interview about schools 1 year later after the pandemic. How are they handling that? And then I realized I have not had that many reps doing sit-down interviews. So the story didn't go exactly how I wanted it to go yesterday. Going back to that self-awareness thing, I could watch the story on TV and go, not how I wanted it to go, but that's new to me is sit-down interviews. So you learn and you grow. But one of the things we have to do daily is we still write our web story for the web team before we head out to our live shots. And the lingo between the two is completely different. So it is very good to diversify and make sure you are up to date on all of those, the proper AP style and those kind of things, because what you write on air and what people would read are online are very different things.
Great. You may or may not remember a conversation we had. We had it on a couple of occasions when we were working together, and I talked about, looking ahead in a career in sports and seeing the way things were going in the industry as a whole, but also in sports specifically, and having to think about, or my encouragement to you and other sports media professionals, to think about figuring out what you might be an expert in or have some expertise in, and then mine that particular niche or lane so that you could stand out in a way, to be a recruiting expert like Adam, on ESPN, or an expert on the selection committee, or an expert on sports medicine or sports finance. I'm interested to, if you think that still holds water, and your reflection on that now that you've transitioned, was in sports for 3 years and now see other sports professionals still, but you're in news. Talk a little bit about that if you feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think one of the things you see pop up on ESPN from time to time, you're like, they got a guy for that, is legal stuff, right? Like they bring in a guy when it comes to law, and they bring in a guy when it comes to medicine, when it comes to rehab. They have all those people that do that. And I think it is always good when you go about your job. Now, in local news, local sports, you have to be everything. You cover it all. You do the features, you do the highlights, you do the nuts and the bolts of the game, which player stands out, what these stats, analyze these stats. And you go, I always felt like I was good at that. Like, oh, that's unique. They win every game when they do this, and they'll need to do that tonight. So those kind of things, and then you kind of just, and like I said, watch yourself and you find what you're good at. And then if you want to pursue that, the more you go up in the industry, the more those kind of roles might be around. So I would say, I think that still holds a lot of weight, Gene. I would just say, look at what you do well, and particularly really well, you think, and then just kind of continue to see what avenues open up along that opportunity, and kind of just continue to flex what you do really well, because I think everybody has in their niche, they have a niche of that niche. And I think you want to get that out as much as possible. And I don't know if you felt this way, Gene, but one of the ones I felt like was not necessarily a statistician, but I always think it's interesting if you can say, in our business, we don't make predictions, right? I don't go out there and say that Auburn's going to beat Alabama and this is why. But I can say, if Auburn does this, they've won every game, and Alabama is no different statistically. And then it always felt good if they won. I don't know if the viewer ever did this, but if they won and Auburn did that and Alabama didn't do this, as I mentioned, and it worked out the way I did, that always feels good. That kind of gives people that you have a deeper understanding of the game and the proper reason to be on a TV telling us about it.
That makes sense. That's very interesting. So, I know I was good at math and science when I was in school, but then pursued this career because I was a better writer and storyteller. but math's important.
Yes, it is.
Especially
I wasn't great at math either.
Where people are obsessed with statistics, and you can find that predictive ability or storylines. You can notice some anomaly in statistics and say, wait a second, why does this guy fall flat every Tuesday night?
And and that you just pointed at that, and that's, I don't know if anybody is big on the statistics, but there was a question kind of like geared towards this and like sports lingo and all that. It is getting more and more a stat game. There is a system, and I think, Gene, we talked about that in your office one time we worked together, and I said, it used to be in the old days, like you didn't get water at practice and you weren't doing this. And now it's like, give Johnny 2 sips of water after his sprints because he performs at peak capacity after 2 sips of water. Don't give him that third one. Everything is measured so much in sports now, and it's all stats and laid out that way. So that would be one area to look out for specializing in, because every game, down to even the most unpredictable things, even NASCAR and all those kind of things, are getting very measured by statistics, and people are using statistics into their game. It's not just, well, let's bring in Joe from the bench here. It is very calculated as to how sports teams are following their statistics, and the sports industry should follow suit with that sooner or later, because it's getting extremely statistical.
Yeah.
Look no further than Vegas spread lines if you need to know there's a predictability to games.
Yeah, both Alabama and Georgia have taken up sports gambling measures during their sessions this go around.
Oh, really?
So,
okay. Yeah, it's legal here in Iowa.
Yeah, so they're saying pretty much, just like they did, years ago when they said, well, let's start making money off of Amazon sales tax. So let's pass these measures. So now they're saying, well, everybody's doing it. Let's make some money off taxing it.
Yeah, and that's another thing is, I don't know if anybody is in, maybe you got an interest in finance or whatever. That's another thing that's changed in the past couple of years. Everything on SportsCenter and stuff is now linked back to sports gambling. When you're watching the bottom line before a game, says like 6 p.m. tip-off or something, and there's like a -6 next to Missouri, that means that Vegas is predicting that Missouri will win by 6 points. And people can bet on if they'll win by more than 6 or less than 6. And you'll notice more and more and more, they are going to people to talk about, is Missouri going to win by 7 or more? And like, oh no, I think Nebraska is going to push them. I think Nebraska is going to lose this game, but only by 2 or 3. And it's crazy how that is becoming a topic on SportsCenter that they're spending times on, but the community is getting so engaged in it. And I don't think they have a lot of people for it right now. So I think they have a desire to move that forward, but they don't have as many people for it that are specialized in it, because you can't just put Joe Schmo up there and his feelings. You need somebody analyzing those statistics so that they can go to you as a trusted source for where they put their money, ironically, smart or not, but that's another kind of what you're talking about, specialization thing. That's one that's coming up.
Let me ask your opinion on this. I don't know if you guys, your team there covers it. If you've seen anybody else, your friends in the industry, and especially in sports, cover it. What are your thoughts on the blooming of esports and the covering of esports?
I think it's extremely interesting. And I think it took a big upward swing during the pandemic, ironically. But you turn on TV on Thursday night or something like that, and it'll be on, ESPN2 or ESPNU. And I think there's definitely an avenue for it. I don't think it'll ever replace like what we see on football fields and stuff today. But that's another thing. And what you're getting at, Gene, is if you specialize in something, and you can be strategic and specializing about what's on an upward trend. And I think esports is definitely one of those. If you know the ins and the outs, I mean, I saw an article, they've got guys at different magazines across the country that are designated just to follow this stuff and this stuff only. And that's a real tangible career right now. And it goes further to what you're saying about finding something you're good at and specializing in it.
We have a production assistant here at my station in Columbus, Georgia, who's from Columbus. He already has, during high school and during his freshman year of college, he is a director for esports competitions in Great Britain. So all of the directing of the program is done remotely. He sits at a computer and these guys are competing and gals are competing, and he's punching the show from Columbus for people in Great Britain competing in an esports league, right? And so he gets paid for that. And his expertise in that, he's the lead director for a new digital studio we just built here, where we're using a lot of that technology to do live streaming shows, and we're beginning to roll out podcasts because he knows that world, right? So I guess my point is that there's a ton of opportunity, as you pointed out, and what would be considered fringe today or tomorrow, but 2 years from now might be mainstream. So I think it's instructive to just be aware of, like, as you said, trends. And, if the big star on your local sports station doesn't want to cover anything to do with esports and there's a high degree of interest, well, that might be a place where you can make your name.
Right. Exactly. And those unique things are always, and the big word I think you just pointed out to was trends. You got to keep your eye on the industry and where's it going. That's really interesting to hear that he can direct it from Columbus, Georgia, and it goes out to England. That's insane, but that's just kind of the way our world is going, and especially in our industry. And Gene, I don't think it's a secret that local news isn't where it was 20, 30 years ago. So you've got to do unique things to get viewers engaged and get them. The surface level stuff, it's the MO of our station. The surface level stuff you can get anywhere. If there's a car crash down the street, you can film the car crash and say one person died, one person is in critical condition, and the viewer didn't get anything that they didn't know. Your job as a reporter, and when we have the resources like we do at KCCI, your job as a reporter to go, why the heck did the police go chase them down 100 miles per hour through 7 intersections when they're not supposed to do that? But the police chief is telling me that they followed all proper procedures. Now we've got 3 kids dead and 2 in critical condition. How did this happen? Why did this happen? Over petty theft, right? Mm-hmm. So there's so much more to the story. And I think sometimes, and when it's just a one-person band, you always kind of have to push yourself because it's hard and the workload you have of the day to only get the gist of the scene. But if you're just telling what happened, they can get that anywhere else. So you've got to go to what does that mean? Why did it happen? And get viewers to think for themselves on the topic, which I also think is important. You're there to tell the facts of the situation, not tell people how they should feel about it.
Great point. You brought it up earlier when you talked about Nathan, and you mentioned the Heidelberg graduate who was at ESPN, and I remember you telling me stories about conversing with him. So talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, about the importance of making those connections and networking in order to have allies and champions in the industry upon whom you can call for advice and feedback, but also who might put you in touch with somebody who can hire you.
Yeah, no, this industry is so small. There are so few people who do what all of you are about to go out in the world and do. And it is important to be nice to everybody, because you never know. Never burn a bridge, never burn a bridge. And always, there can be some highly emotional times in newsrooms in our industry, and we cover a lot of controversial topics, but never, ever burn a bridge. I was so excited to see you call the other day, Gene, to kind of give this opportunity to me to talk, which I really enjoyed doing. And thank you for letting me do this. But those connections, I mean, who knows? Maybe as my contract comes up at KCCI, Gene goes over to Philadelphia to be the news director, and he's got a weekend morning spot that opens up first thing as my contract is ending, and Gene can call me. You know, there's always those kind of things. And it's amazing too. And Gene, you like this, we had a meet and greet with the GM when I first got here in December over Teams because of the pandemic.
Right.
But he was like, do you know Lewis Wall? He saw my station. He's like, that was our owner. And I was like, yeah, of course I know Lewis. And he just talked about, you know, that he met Lewis and all these kind of things. And he didn't know our GM at the time, Mark, but he knew Lewis. And it's just, you know, I had good relationships with those people. And the more you move in this industry, the more everybody knows everybody. And he also, Gene, knew the GM and news director over at TVM, your competitor, the ABC Fox affiliate. And that's who I had worked under for the past couple months, which is a different situation. But he had only positive things to say about them. I had only positive things to say about them. And it's just great. You're all so close to being linked to another person. You just want to be on, I don't want to say your best behavior, but you just want to be thinking about making connections all the time, because you never know. Your reel looks the same. Your social media's got around the same status. You've got the same kind of framework, the great polished delivery. But this guy over here, you know, he's had some people kind of thrown off in the newsroom. This guy right here is a joy to work with on all accounts. Who do you think they're going for?
Makes sense. Well, we're coming up on 11:30 here. I want to be respectful of your time, Scott. Does anybody else have a question they'd like to ask before we begin to wrap things up? I don't see anybody raising their hand. Okay, so Scott, thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking time on your off day to share such great information and insight and advice to our interns. And you know, all of you, as you know, with all of our guest speakers, I put their contact information in the invitation and Outlook and send it to you. So you've got Scott's email address, you've got his social platforms. I'd follow Scott, you know, see the work he's doing, you know, seek him out for advice. He's good at what he does. He's a generous person. He's a great guy, and he's somebody who's going to go very, very far in this business. So, you know, as Scott said, you know Scott today while he's the weekend morning anchor at KCCI, and you might see him when he's doing CBS evening news, you know, in 15 years, you know. So
your check's in the mail. Thank you, Gene.
Scott, one thing I do, and just a final thoughts from you, Scott, if you don't mind.
Yeah, just and keeping in mind of, it sounds like you guys are all in your later college years. Enjoy it. Don't stress over it too much, because this is a really tough industry to get a job in, and don't let that. I let that discourage me. It took until August for me to land at WLTZ in Columbus, Georgia after I graduated. The name of the game is getting the applications out there and getting it into the hands of as many news directors as possible. Don't be discouraged when you don't hear a reply, or don't be discouraged when a person says we're pursuing other options. There'll be a right option for you. You just got to keep going, keep going, keep going. Don't give up on the applications front, because it is the most difficult part of our industry, is getting that first job, I think.
Great advice, Scott. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.